Hey everybody, it's Black Friday, and you know what that means. Sunset Lake Seder is having a big sale. It started earlier this week. It ends Monday, December 2nd. It's 30% off statewide. The code is Friday. Orders of over $100 get a 20-count jar of Relax gummies included for free. Orders of $200 also get a 20-count jar of Focus gummies included for free. We wax poetically about Sunset Lake Seder all the time, but with temperatures dropping, days shorter, our day-to-day stresses, well, those remain the same, but we can help you with Sunset Lake wind down in 2024, and you deserve to rest and recharge. One of our favorite sponsors, Sunset Lake, can help you with that. They are kicking off their Black Friday sale. Right now, you can save 30% site-wide. When you head to sunsetlakesebede.com and use code Friday, they have everything that you need. They have tinctures, they have smalls, they have the gummies, which are a favorite of mine, although those tinctures are really nice too. They have fudge. They use regenerative farming practices so you can trust the product that you're getting. They treat their workers well. They are collaborators with us on fundraising for refugee resettlement and Planned Parenthood and other causes that we believe in here at the Majority Report, so you can feel good about supporting them as well as getting a great product. Sunset Lake is including some freebies this year. As I mentioned earlier, if your order is over $100, they will throw in a free 20-count jar of Relax functional mushroom gummies. If your order is over $200, they'll also throw in a 20-count jar of the Focus functional mushroom gummies. Head over to sunsetlakesebede.com and use code Friday to save 30%. See their site for terms and conditions. And now, time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, November 21st, 2024. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live, steps, from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Mike Prysner, producer and co-writer of the Empire Files, will be with us to talk about Tulsi Gabbard, one of Trump's picks, and why her past is so sketchy. And Erin Reed will be with us as well, of Erin In The Morning, to talk about the anti-trans hysteria happening with Republicans right now. Also on the show today, the ICC finally issues arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant. And the State Department coincidentally cancels today's press briefing. And stop me if you've heard this before. Israel is very interested in a ceasefire, this time in Lebanon. Their conditions? The right to continue firing if they want.
Let us genocide Palestinians.
This time it's Lebanese people.
All right.
Yeah. Hard to keep track. This also comes as Bernie Sanders' resolution to block arms sales to Israel predictably did fail, but encouraging to see 18 other Democrats vote yes, including both Georgia senators. That's up there now with the two better senator duos in the country. 15 House Democrats joined the Republicans and passed H.R. 9495, giving Trump the power, if the Senate passes it, to destroy any nonprofit his administration says supports terror. The U.S. plans to send internationally banned anti-personnel landmines to Ukraine, known to maim and kill civilians. For a while, they're landmines. Republicans blocked the release of the Matt Gaetz ethics report in the House, but Democrats request his FBI file. The police report for Trump's defense secretary pick, Hegseth, recounts him blocking the door, taking the woman's phone before allegedly assaulting her. Trump's pick for education secretary, Linda McMahon, was once sued for allowing a predator to use his position as ringside announcer to sexually exploit children. This is a theme for Trump's picks here, folks. Texas offers Trump a parcel of land for him to conduct mass deportations. That does not sound good. Like internment camp, potentially not good. Biden rushes to confirm judges and finalize clean energy production across the country and contracts. And lastly, Brazil and China sign dozens of trade deals and further cement a partnership. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's an EmMajority Report Thursday. I am back. I was technically off yesterday, but I actually kind of was working because I did Piers Morgan's show, which was pretty fun. I want to apologize to the other guy that was on, not the two conservative women, I don't care, but there was a guy on there who we played his show before. What is his name? I'm sorry.
Luke Beasley. He was the one who had that Christian right couple on when they said that sexual intercourse without procreation is.
We did that yesterday.
Yeah. Luke Beasley happened to be on with you on that panel, which is funny. It's just
I feel badly that I talked over him, but for Piers and those other two women, I don't care. So but it was, it's the kind of thing where you go and you hope you're not invited back because it means you did your job. But we'll see. I mean,
the important things on the docket, like the bathroom stuff we need to be freaking out about, and crediting Nancy Mace's supposed drama.
And what got me riled up was I had to listen to him do a whole interview with Glenn Beck about the left in the 10 minutes while I was sitting getting ready to go. And I don't know if that aired as a part of it, but holy moly, is that an insanely frustrating conversation to listen to between those two individuals.
Yes, Glenn Beck about Russian assets in his vicinity, because that might have been a good question.
There were no good questions, is what I can tell you. But on to some real serious news here, and it's just finally, the ICC has issued arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and former now Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, as well as, a Hamas commander, Mohammed Deif. And they do that, I think, really just to kind of make it so that they can't get accused of anti-Semitism, but Israel's already doing that. Yeah. The ICC rejected challenges to its jurisdiction from Israel's side because for all of the talk about a rules-based international order, the United States and Israel are not members of the court. But the court determined it still had jurisdiction because it's there to protect folks from crimes against humanity and war crimes, which are the charges leveled at these two individuals.
It has jurisdiction when we're talking about Russia, but when we're talking about Israel, no.
No. And speaking of Russia, I believe it was, I forget which country it was that Putin went to recently that is one of the 125 member states of the ICC, and they still didn't arrest him there, even though technically those countries are supposed to have a legal obligation to arrest them. But it still presents a lot of problems. Netanyahu and Gallant can't go to any of those 125 countries. Yeah. Ukraine was added recently.
It's without the threat if they do and aren't arrested.
He visited he visited Mongolia in September, and they did not carry out the warrant. And it looks like he's going to visit India too. And
Modi won't.
I was just going to say, I'm just speculating, but I can't imagine Narendra Modi would act on that. Yeah,
no, I can't imagine that either. But they both have a passion for killing Muslim people and subjugating them. So, it's not like we're going to see Netanyahu in cuffs tomorrow, but it does present issues for him and, all the fancy vacations he wants to take. And we can take some comfort in that fact that one of the worst people ever born in the history of humanity committing genocide before our very eyes will at least be hampered in that regard. And it's just nice to see some semblance of accountability. So naturally, when Trump gets into office, I imagine the Republicans are going to try to sanction members of the ICC. I think that's probably a foregone conclusion. Yeah,
Jeet here made a good point, though. It is unfair to focus so much on Israel, and you might want to throw Blinken and Biden on the docket as well.
That is completely fair. And in a just world, that would be the case. But as a reminder, in October, a group of 99 American doctors, nurses, healthcare workers wrote to the White House and said, hey, the death toll is minimum 118,000, which is like over 5% of Gaza's total population, and we're talking minimum. And you had doctors writing pieces in the New York Times showing visual evidence of sniper bullets to the hearts and into the brains of little children and babies targeted by these Israel war criminals and genocidal freaks.
Yeah, not human shields, just kids being shot by Israelis.
And so here is Majed Bamya, who is the deputy permanent observer to the United Nations for Palestine. She's speaking here at the UN Security. I'm sorry. That's not that. Yeah, that's not her. Or him. He here is speaking at the UN Security Council and making. Oh, this is the guy. I know him then. And just about essentially what Israel has been doing that led to this particular point.
Thank you, Madam President. There is no right to mass killing of civilians. There is no right to starve an entire civilian population. There is no right to forcibly displace a people. And there is no right to annexation. This is what Israel is doing in Gaza. These are its war objectives. This is what the absence of a ceasefire is allowing it to continue doing. This full-fledged Israeli assault against the Palestinian people and the Palestinian land is about everything except the hostages. If the families of hostages can see that, how can anyone in this room claim otherwise? A ceasefire will allow to save lives, all lives. This was true a year ago. This is even more true today. A ceasefire doesn't resolve everything, but it is the first step towards resolving anything. And what is the answer of those who are still unwilling now, after all this death and destruction, not to call for an unconditional ceasefire? Is it to accept that the killing should continue until we resolve everything while we watch that we are resolving nothing? We heard over and over again statements in this chamber by all members without distinction about protection of civilians, about rejecting forcible displacement, about rejecting starving the Palestinian population, about rejecting annexation, about rejecting wanton destruction, about rejecting regional escalation. Everyone around this table agreed on these objectives. And yet here we are. 44,000 Palestinians killed. This is those who are accounted for. Many more are not accounted for. One day we will retrieve them in mass graves under the rubbles, and we will discover the real numbers of this horror. And there will be many that we will never retrieve.
And the United States vetoed that resolution.
Yoav Gallant on October 9th, 2023. I've ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals, and we must act accordingly. And this is
That's
obvious.
intent. That's intent. And so anybody that tells you that there's no intent that has been articulated by the Israeli government, read them that quote that Matt just read.
Yeah, and you'll have certain people that are like, say, smearing Hassan Piker, that say Yoav Gallant is like a nice moderate and we should support him. No, these are the terrorists. These are the murderers. These are the killers. And they are marching with our war material. and everything that has happened since Yoav Gallant said that, and has been to obscure this. And so what we have now is, like, we have Fox News going after Hassan again. They're pointing the finger because the best defense is a good offense. And this is a Holocaust that Israelis and Zionists and all of the people in media that are trying to obscure this fact, in my opinion, should face some penalty as well.
The Bernie Sanders resolution, just to point this out, who voted the right way, that failed to block arms sales to Israel. There were still a number of Democrats that voted for it. Of course, no Republicans did. Here's the list so you know. Dick Durbin, which is surprising a little to me. Good for him. Heinrich of New Mexico. Helmy, who is the senator who has been in Menendez's place since he stepped aside, and Kim is going to take his place of New Jersey, voted for Bernie's resolution. Hirono of Hawaii. Tim Kaine, who is always been pretty decent on this issue, of Virginia. Angus King of Maine. Ben Ray Lujan of New Mexico, so both New Mexico senators voted for this. Ed Markey, and then Elizabeth Warren, we'll see later, both Massachusetts senators. Jeff Merkley of Oregon. Chris Murphy of Connecticut. John Ossoff of Georgia, as well as Warnock of Georgia, also encouraging to see both of them. Bernie Sanders, Brian Schatz, Shaheen of New Hampshire, that was a surprising one. Smith of Minnesota, Tina Smith, not Klobuchar though. Van Hollen of Maryland, as I mentioned, Warnock and Warren, and then Welch of Vermont joining the other senator from the state, Bernie Sanders, on his own resolution. So those are the folks in the Senate that deserve praise, but at the same time, right, you know, it's still taken way, way, way too long. And it's Chuck Schumer and Biden and the White House who were also responsible for opposing this measure and probably depressed the votes from some other Democrats who may have been on the fence because of White House pressure to continue the genocide in Gaza.
I mean, they're guilty of genocide. Chuck Schumer is a genocider. Joe Biden is a genocidal person. These are genocidal people. People credit the Senate as the most deliberative body on earth. And I would struggle to think of a more genocidal body accounting for all two centuries plus. Maybe the House of Lords, but that is a body of genocide. They do genocides. They've done genocides for centuries, and they're doing one now. And, you know, I appreciate, and I think, yeah, it's worthwhile sending a message through phone or email to these senators for doing the right thing here, because it's good to, you know, reward positive behavior. The Senate is a genocidal body, and it's very horrifying that we have to rely on somebody like Chuck Schumer, who I think is a great bloodletter along with Blinken and Biden, to like get NLRB things passed, as he's also taking aim at anybody who wants to, frankly, have a honest discussion about what Israel's doing to Palestinians.
A word from our sponsors, and then we'll be talking to Mike Prysner. First is Shopify. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds or Skims, all products that I have purchased, and probably because Shopify made it so easy. Well, you think about a great product, a cool brand, brilliant marketing, but what's often overlooked is there's a secret that actually the businesses behind those businesses are making selling, and for shoppers buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. It is the home of the #1 checkout on the planet, and the not so secret with it has Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%. That means way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going ka-ching. So if you're interested in growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. We at the Majority Report use Shopify for our store. It makes it easy for us, even when the merch and the sales stuff doesn't come necessarily naturally. Shopify is very good at that. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allo and Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/majority, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/majority to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/majority. And lastly, have you thought about a gift for yourself this year? One that has the power to help you grow, learn, and become a better version of you? Well, give yourself the gift of language by getting Babbel. Now, Babbel, I am getting myself this gift. I'm already, spoiler alert, because I want to go to Europe next year for my honeymoon. That's what the plan is as of right now. And I don't want to look like an idiot walking around and not being able to know how to say anything because I took Latin in high school like a dummy. And I should have taken something a little bit more practical, but now I have Babbel that can help me out with that. Speak like a whole new you with Babbel, the language learning app that gets you talking with a quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts. Babbel gets you talking with a new language in 3 weeks. And because talking is the key to really knowing a language, Babbel is designed for real conversation. Wasting hundreds on private tutors is the old way of learning languages. Babbel's tips and tools are inspired by real-life stuff that you'll actually practically need when talking. It has a focus on conversation, so you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. Want more proof that Babbel gets you talking? Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and other leading universities continue to prove Babbel works. One study found that using Babbel for at least 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. With over 16 million subscriptions sold, Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by a 20-day money-back guarantee, so your gift to yourself or your loved ones is risk-free. This holiday season, give the gift of language with Babbel, and here is a special holiday deal for the Majority Report's listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/majority. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/majority, spelled BABBEL.com/majority. Rules and restrictions may apply. All right, folks, quick break, and when we come back, we'll be talking to Mike Prysner. We are back, and we are joined by Mike Prysner, producer and co-writer of the Empire Files, who has done extensive work on one of the weirdest people in our political landscape, Tulsi Gabbard. Mike, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Hey, thanks for helping put me on the radar even more of the new director of national intelligence. Not worried about that at all.
You can get on the enemies list.
Are you on the enemies list, or are you too white man for that and not Muslim like Mehdi, I don't know what Mehdi's religion is, but that seems to be her bag. He was on the list.
The new enemies list. That enemies list was during her campaign. It was all the people that were like trolling her a lot, which I was not at the time. I had just done one podcast episode about her, but since then, I'm sure I've made it. But yeah, it's all fun and games until the person you're trolling gets put in charge of the CIA and 17 other spy agencies.
Yeah, that's gonna be rough. I mean, I think she's gonna get confirmed. Like, there's a lot of creeps. Gaetz, it's up in the air. Hegseth, now there's this detailed sexual assault allegation in the police report. But with her, they may just think, okay, she's another kind of deep state person that has some intelligence ties herself. Like, I guess, what's the harm?
Yeah, it's lucky for her that Gaetz and Hegseth are going to be sucking out all the oxygen out of the room. I feel like the Democrats may focus on the people they feel they can most easily block the confirmation of to be able to claim some kind of victory by blocking one or two of them. And Tulsi may just be lower on that totem pole of people they think they can knock out, which, I think is part of what made me interested in Tulsi in the first place, is the things that weren't covered about her versus the things that were. All I have done in my, the small reporting I've done on Tulsi is really just compiling the work that other investigative journalists have done. People like Nick Grube at the Honolulu Civil Beat, Christine Graylow, independent journalist for Meanwhile in Hawaii, Peter Friedrich for the Caravan magazine. The New Yorker did a really great piece.
Carrie Howley, I return to that often. Yeah, well, she profiled her.
Yeah, and so there's these things that kind of exist that have really kind of damning details that deserve a lot of scrutiny, but they never seem to be what's covered by the media, but by other politicians and all of that. I think a great example is 60 Minutes just ran this short piece where they went through Trump's cabinet of curiosities and gave a quick, here's why each of these people are bad and should not be in the positions that Trump is appointing them for. And then they said one thing about Tulsi, and the one thing they said about Tulsi to, discredit her in the eyes of the viewers was that she wanted to pardon Edward Snowden, which is, right. But it's of all the other things out there, it's why is that the thing that you're going to focus on? And so, I've always been kind of confused as to why the things that they really could go after her for, the really, I think the really damning things, is just kind of usually omitted. I mean, maybe partially that's because it was ignored when the Democrats were promoting her as a rising star, and now they'd have to indict themselves by now talking about that stuff. But yeah, it never gets the coverage it deserves. I mean, maybe hopefully now that she's under more scrutiny, but so far I haven't really seen it.
We just have breaking news that Matt Gaetz has withdrawn himself from Attorney General consideration as of 5 minutes
More
ago.
time to focus on Tulsi.
Woo!
Yeah, bad news for Tulsi.
Yes, exactly. So let's get right to it, and I'm sure we'll be updating everybody on that breaking story later on. But for those who may not be familiar with this character's political trajectory, how did she get into Congress? What's her background? And how did she get into Trump's orbit?
Yeah, I mean, to know the story, you really have to talk about the Science of Identity Foundation, which is the religious organization she grew up in. Many ex-members have called it a cult. Many of those ex-members have talked to the press, and there's some really damning stuff in there. The Science of Identity Foundation is run by a white surfer guy named Chris Butler, who is deemed himself a messenger of God, a direct messenger of God. And so all of his disciples believe that he is, God's messenger on earth and kind of worship him. And he has people who serve him and do his chores and things like that. But, I'm not disparaging anyone for being part of a religious or spiritual community that's like that. People are totally free to do that kind of stuff. And I don't hate on any of those people. But the thing about Science of Identity is it has had a wing of a political project. For Tulsi's entire life since she was a baby, Chris Butler and the Science of Identity Foundation have tried to get their members into positions of power into politics. Tulsi Gabbard's parents are two of those people, very close to Chris Butler in his inner circle. They have both achieved political office in Hawaii as part of this project, and several other Science of Identity members, many of them have ran, but some of them have actually gotten into local politics. But they never achieved politics on a national stage. Tulsi was very much groomed for that because she was a part of her father's and her mother's and Butler's political organizing project, even when she was a teenager, appearing in anti-gay ads, helping her dad organize, patriotic groups. They had all these weird little political projects that were aimed at building a political career for their members. And so when she ran, for local office in Hawaii, both at this, kind of the local state level, and then for Congress, this is something that had been built by people in the organization, for a long time. And so when she wanted to run for Congress, she was doing this in a very blue state. And the thing about Science of Identity is they have very right-wing politics when it comes to LGBTQ people, when it comes to women's choice. In particular, a hatred of Muslims, a deep, deep hatred of Muslims is very much a part of that ideology.
We can return to that. Yeah.
Yes, which we absolutely should, because that's going to play a lot into actually her role as the head of the DNI. in kind of like a post 9/11 like style, like Bush era shit. But when she was trying to run for Congress with these clearly coming from a very right-wing background, and she had been on the record in like the state legislature talking about like homosexual extremists and things like that. But you can't really win Congress in Hawaii if you have those right-wing views. I mean, it's like the bluest state in the United States. And so she did a kind of rebrand where she really leaned into, I am a Hindu woman of color veteran, and I am now progressive on gay rights and women's choice and things like that. And then she just very quickly ascended. I mean, as soon as she got elected into Congress, she was given all these heights. She was a speaker at the Democratic National Convention that year. She got put as a co-chair of the DNC, and she got put on these like commissions, things like that. So she got like very quickly promoted by the party because she was very much considered a rising star in the party. And so through her time in Congress, I mean, she kind of played that game where she kind of acquiesced to what she needed to be in the Democratic Party, but then started to assert her own politics a little more. I think most notably, she was the one person in the Democratic Party who was calling out Obama for not calling out radical Islamic extremism. And so the anti-Muslim views that she was raised with started to show there. And then, we've seen where her career went since then, bouncing from thing to thing to see what would get her higher and higher into power. And that's how she ended up. She was a Bernie supporter, then a Trump supporter. All of these kind of acts of like a political chameleon were to what was advantageous at the time to get the biggest audience and the most amount of people. And so I think that's the reason it deserves scrutiny is because if someone just has a weird or unconventional religious background, that shouldn't be up for scrutiny. But the fact that science of identity very clearly has a political project, if they want to get people in office, it means they have a political agenda. But we don't know what that political agenda is. We can read into some of it with Tulsi's positions, but we don't actually know why Chris Butler wants his members to be in positions of power. But there is a reason, because they've been trying very hard to do that. So we should have the right to know, I think.
Absolutely. Although you will be called Hindu-phobic by her followers, which I think was a real thing back in like 2019 when she began to pivot towards like a more right-wing position. Although when she ran for president, basically she did one thing, was she went after Kamala Harris on the debate stage and then swiftly dropped out and endorsed Biden. And it had this like heartfelt endorsement where she spoke about how she served with Bo and she knows he's a man of character. And within less than 4 years, she's clearly on the MAGA train, and the left left her. It's the same old shtick. But the Chris Butler thing is just the obviously this incredibly meaty piece that the rest of the media hasn't dove into. He's still alive, Butler?
He's still around. He actually did a very rare interview with The New Yorker back when she was running for president in 2019. Although, you won't see the Hindu-phobic stuff as much anymore because as part of her rebrand to MAGA people, she has really put a lid on that stuff. Yeah, it used to be first Hindu member of Congress, sworn in on the Bhagavad Gita. That was very much a part of her identity when she was a Democrat. That's actually why I was a little surprised that she got the nomination, because I guess overestimated how much like Christian nationalists were really a part of Trump's like inner workings, and that seeing someone like Gabbard, who clearly is not a Christian, but then tried to rebrand recently and started talking about Jesus a lot more. Her memoir, which I read, really tries to say, actually, it was the Bible that was read most in my house. And actually, I kind of like was more of a Christian, was kind of her narrative in her book. So really kind of switching from her past characterization of her spiritual background. And so, I think that all the people that were accusing you of being Hindu-phobic back during that time, or likely all members of the Science of Identity Foundation who were tasked with going online and arguing with these people. That's what that list, the enemies list, these were all Science of Identity members who were, volunteer work or mandatory service of going out and encountering people online. But I think they want to downplay the Hindu stuff now quite a bit.
Well, because obviously, as you've said, the whole goal is about getting into power. So, Chris Butler, can you talk about the history of this cult? I know he's a guru, and essentially it's an offshoot of the Hare Krishnas, which obviously had their own internal issues back when that was exploding in the late 60s and 70s. But who is he? What are the core beliefs of this cult? And how high up is Tulsi and her family in this particular organization?
Yeah, well, Butler, as a young guy, was a follower of it's called ISKCON. It's like the International Center of Krishna Consciousness or something. And so the Hare Krishnas, which, some people may recognize or have them in their town or something. When the leader of ISKCON died, there was all these splits, and then different people declared themselves gurus and then had their own flock of disciples. And Butler was one of those people. So as a young guy, he basically said in a split from the Hare Krishna group he was in, I actually am the true messenger of God, none of these other guys. And so he developed a small group of people around him that believed he was the messenger of God, and then they just grew and grew. And then they're financed by a lot of businesses that members have. There's potentially some shady stuff there. But now they have quite a lot of money and financing. I think they're one of their front groups in Australia. They have a large number of people in Australia. They have over $40 million in the bank of one of their yoga nonprofits or something like that. So it has a significant amount of money. They have perhaps thousands of members. They've sent missions to different countries. And so they have reach outside of the United States, definitely outside of Hawaii. But I think one of the things that characterizes, but outside of just the, I'm the true messenger of God thing, is that And the thing is I've also talked directly to ex-members of Science of Identity. None of them wanted to go on the record because they really fear reprisal because, Christine Graylow, one of those journalists, was followed and harassed by Science of Identity members. According to her, they use the same law firm that Scientology uses. And so there's a lot of fear among ex-members to talk about their experiences. But one of the things is that the indoctrination, it's not just that Butler is this spiritual leader, but the anti-gay bigotry is really central. And ex-members I talk to say that, you listen to these tapes all the time of Chris Butler giving his spiritual lectures. And there's different levels of these tapes that go deeper and deeper into the ideology. And there's one level that's just pure anti-gay bigotry. And so, there's people that have spoken to this publicly, ex-members, but also people that I've talked to say that, as children growing up, you just listen at bedtime to these lectures of Chris Butler, which include extremely, as they describe it, extremely pornographic descriptions of gay sex in a way to disgust you and say how horrible and disgusting this is. So that's kind of a strange thing to be wrapped into
It's called Hindu, grooming in some circumstances.
Yeah, I feel like that's not something you want to expose small children to. And then another part of it is just anti-Muslim hatred. And there's been definitely clips of Butler talking about this stuff. And that's something that we've seen kind of play into Tulsi's ideology as well. And so, ex-members say that the Butler is a very mean, narcissistic guy who has all these servants, bringing him food, doing his chores, kissing his feet, things like that. He will get very mad at you and punish you if you do your chores wrong and things like that. So just kind of typical cult stuff that you hear from other people. But I think what's unique about it is the political angle, that Butler has some kind of political agenda that is driven mainly by hatred of gay people and hatred of Muslims, and that has tried to put people in positions of power to, carry out that agenda or some other agenda that we don't actually know about.
And you mentioned on your show, I listened to your review, a bit of it, of her book, and how she's always in white, and she's in white on the cover, which is has something to do with Butler. If you could just flesh out how much of her public persona fits very neatly into these specific cult requirements in a way that most people are not going to pick up on.
Yeah, well, one thing I didn't answer is what is Tulsi's position in this organization? And that's she's in Butler's inner circle, or at least her family always has been, and Tulsi has been. Even her two husbands, her ex-husband and her current husband, are people like Gabbard. They are the children of Science of Identity royalty. So her first husband, his parents, very close to Butler, her ex-father-in-law actually ran Chris Butler's weird boarding school in the Philippines, which you got to wonder, why do you put a boarding school for children in the Philippines and not in the state that you live in the United States? Probably it's a lot easier to get away with weird shit and things that wouldn't fly at a school in the United States. You can probably get away with it in the Philippines. So Tulsi's ex-father-in-law was the headmaster of the school in the Philippines. Her current husband his mom is high up in science of identity and very close to the Butler family and Butler's wife. And Tulsi Gabbard's parents are that as well, are very, very close to Butler. And so, clearly, Tulsi's upbringing has been close to Butler, and her family, her spouses, all kind of in this inner Butler circle. And, when you mentioned like her outfit, like Chris Butler, that's his outfit. He wears all white. That's what he wears. He's only seen in all white because, he's a messenger of God, and looks good if you're in all white and you're a messenger of God. It fits. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that that's kind of Tulsi's trademark outfit is the all white, which would indicate, there's still some degree of relationship there. And then, in that New Yorker piece in 2019, and 2020 for that presidential campaign, she doesn't deny that she's still very close to Butler. In fact, in that story where she lets the New Yorker journalist get close to her and talk to Butler, she literally showed like a tree of like a family tree of religious leaders, with Butler being the new messenger of God. And so she has not denied, she very much downplays this connection, but she definitely hasn't said, oh yeah, this was a thing when I was younger and I'm no longer a part of it. And so we can only wonder where it is now, but these are the questions that are not being asked of her.
Right. And her staff, can you talk a bit more about how she staffed her campaigns and almost congressional positions with members of this Science of Identity Foundation as well?
Yeah. I mean, that's another indicator there as well. I mean, I think that's also from the New Yorker piece, is that people running her campaign, people staffing her office were members of Science of Identity Foundation. There's also a really good story in the Honolulu Civil Beat about how a lot of campaign funds were actually going to Science of Identity members' businesses that didn't actually do anything. And so there's this, potential laundering of campaign money just directly to high-ranking Science of Identity members, website businesses that didn't actually do anything. And so there's clear links there, which are kind of there for anyone to see, but for some reason doesn't get looked at hard enough.
And the Islamophobic and hatred of Muslims piece, when she was a Democrat, she was going on Fox News quite frequently to accuse Obama of being too soft on terror by not saying the words radical Islamic extremism. This is one of these news cycles that maybe gets memory hold for people, but it was like a month-long obsession, and fit into the racist narrative about Obama himself with the Barack Hussein Obama emphasis. So if you could give us a better sense of her views on this and how it informs her foreign policy.
Yeah. And so this, she somehow has this label as like a peace politician,
right,
an anti-interventionist and all. Yeah. And I never really understood where that came from. I mean, if you look at the U.S. is at war in a lot of places, Africa, Asia, Middle East, all over the place. I think Tulsi opposes one current U.S. military intervention, and that's the proxy war in Ukraine.
Exactly.
That's one. All the rest of them, she either supports or is more hawkish on. And I think this really comes back to this, her anti-Muslim views. She has always that's the one thing she didn't compromise when she was doing her chameleon thing to be in the Democratic Party. And if all of the attention she gets, like the biggest thing that's leveled against her is that she's a lover of dictators, because she praises Putin and she met with Assad, right? And this has been interpreted by the mainstream media as she just loves dictators and authoritarians, and that's why she does this stuff. But really, when you look into it, if you look at all of her tweets praising Russia, it's all about Russia bombing al-Nusra and ISIS. If you look at her meeting with Assad, it's all about this is a Christian government fighting a Muslim insurgency. So Tulsi's position on Russia...
Modi, right? Her support for Narendra Modi is because he represses the Muslim minority in the country?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so, yes, these love of dictators are really the love of people who she sees as partners in the global war on terror, which she says herself she is a hawk on. And so I think this is one of the dangers of her being in a position in U.S. foreign policy, and specifically overseeing spy agencies. The CIA and the FBI did so much horrible damage to the Muslim community in America after 9/11. I mean, there was not a mosque in America you could go into without FBI informants, trying to entrap young Muslim teenagers into saying something provocative and to be thrown away in jail. I mean, the level of surveillance and entrapment was really horrific and terrible. So now someone who is very much in line with that ideology, being in charge of the spy agencies, that number one is bad. But when you have someone who he has this anti-interventionist label, right? But we know calls herself a hawk in the war on terror and is to the right of the government on attacking Iran and Lebanon and Palestine and Yemen, all of a sudden, at a moment where we are like on a brink of regional war, I mean, arguably are involved in a regional war at the moment, and then we're having someone come in who somehow is labeled this isolationist, non-interventionist, but who very much would want to escalate these conflicts. I think that's very dangerous, both from the domestic perspective of who is going to be spied on in our own country and own communities, but also who is going to be in Trump's ear with extremists like Hegseth and others who think that we actually need to be more aggressive when it comes to, fighting radical Islamic extremism around the world, some of whom, according to her definition, have state power in these countries that the U.S. is currently bombing or sanctioning or doing other things to.
And lastly, Mike, can you just shed some light on her role in the military in and of itself? Because I know that you mentioned U.S. intervention or U.S. war and operations in Africa. Didn't she just come back from doing from her time over there, where I believe she's actually involved in some kind of like information warfare subset of the military, if I'm not mistaken? Yeah,
that would be psychological operations, which
there you go.
Is usually not a good phrase to say. But yeah, no, she has a long career. She's a lieutenant colonel in the reserves. That's, she's two more promotions and she's a general. So there's only one more rank to go above that where you're not a general. So that's a high position of power. That's why I didn't buy any of this shit. Her saying that she's on like a terror watch list. She gets followed on the airplane and stuff. There's no way that Tulsi doesn't have a top secret security clearance to be in that position. I mean, if you are a commander of a battalion that is a special operations PSYOPs battalion, the only way she doesn't have a security clearance is if every time she walks in a command center, they have to take down all the maps that are hanging up, because all that stuff in that setting is classified. I mean, there's no way that she is able to be in that position without a security clearance. And so I don't think you can have a security clearance and be on a terror watch list. So that story never seemed to make sense to me. But yeah, no, she has a long career in the military. I mean, she, before she joined the military, her and her dad started some kind of like pro-America organization after 9/11 to support the military. She joined at a young age, like I did. But she kind of continued to pursue not just a military career, but like conflict zones. I think it's really interesting. People who don't know a lot about the Army, but, Tulsi was in a medic position on her first tour. She reclasses to a different job into military police, which is at that time was like one of the roles where women were very often in combat in the early years of the Iraq War. So she joins as a military police officer, gets deployed to Kuwait and not another combat zone. But then she, left the National Guard and went into the reserves based in California to take a command position and a promotion in this special operations PSYOPs unit that she's done at least one deployment, that we know of, to Africa, which she was very proud of fighting radical Islamic terrorists there. And so, yeah, it always never really fit. That's why I was always skeptical from the beginning of her anti-war brand, because she not only remained in the military, but very clearly pursued places that would put her in combat zones and jobs that would kind of escalate her role as being a functionary of this war machine. And so those two things, never really drive. It makes sense if you're like an anti-war veteran. You're like, I've been there. I think it's wrong. That's why I got out. But to continue trying to rise through the ranks. And again, it kind of mirrors her political career, right? Where she has always pursued power and promotions in the military and in her political world. And I think the question people should be asking is, why does she want that power? Is it just because she is ambitious, or is there some kind of deeper motives? And the more you look into her background, the more you think there may be some deeper motives there.
Absolutely. Well, Mike Prysner, really appreciate your time today, producer and co-writer of the Empire Files. Thanks so much for giving us a deep dive on this. Really appreciate it.
Anytime.
All right, folks, with that, we are going to move to our second guest. I recorded this conversation with Erin Reed a little bit earlier this morning, so here we go. This is us talking about the anti-trans panic going on in the with House Republicans and with the Republican Party more broadly right now. We are back, and we are joined now by Erin Reed, independent journalist of the Erin In The Morning Substack / newsletter. Erin, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
So I wanted to open with first, let me ask you, you were at Congress yesterday in the midst of this anti-trans panic over Sarah McBride becoming the first openly trans lawmaker in Congress. What did you observe, and who did you talk to some Democrats? What's the temperature in Washington right now?
Yeah, so my fiance Zoe Zephyr and I, we were in Congress yesterday to talk to people just about what to expect. You know, I've tracked all these bills coming through state houses for the last 4 years now. I know how these debates accelerate and how they develop. And so I just wanted to talk to Democrats about what I was seeing. And I will say that it is wild to be using the bathroom in the Capitol bathroom and to get a notification on my phone that says that I'm not going to be allowed to use the bathroom. It's the same bathroom I've been using for years. We had that notification that Nancy Mace's resolution to ban trans people in the Capitol from bathrooms where it was going to be accepted by Speaker Johnson. That resolution, it impacts so many people because I don't think people understand how many queer or trans or gender nonconforming Capitol workers there are, but there's a lot. There's a lot of staffers. There's a lot of people that don't have, private bathrooms to go to. And so it gets very difficult for them. As far as what I was observing, I spoke to several Democrats. I think that a lot of Democrats do get it. A lot of Democrats do understand the sort of like the vitriol that Sarah McBride is currently seeing and the vitriol that we're seeing from people like Nancy Mace. But that said, I think that there are a contingent of Democrats that are scared of the right wing, and that could potentially be beaten into submission, if you will.
This is where I'll read the first paragraph of your piece in Erin In The Morning from 2 days ago. In a move as predictable as it is outrageous, Republicans have launched a full-blown crusade against the first transgender Congresswoman, Sarah McBride. Representative Nancy Mace has introduced a resolution to ban McBride from using women's bathrooms and locker rooms, a measure that seems to enjoy significant support within the Republican caucus. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson has hinted at so-called accommodations that would effectively segregate McBride from public facilities entirely. This uproar comes as some Democrats and pundits toy with the idea of compromising on transgender rights, particularly in areas like sports. Today's events lay bare the folly of such a strategy. There can be no middle ground with those intent on erasing transgender Americans from public life. And I just thought that paragraph almost summed up everything that we need to take away from this story, which is just that, I was on Piers Morgan yesterday debating this topic, and I said to him, oh, so separate but equal, which he bristled at, right? But that's exactly what it is. And okay, Representative McBride, you can use your private bathroom, but what about all of the people that come into the Capitol building every day, the workers that you talk about? I mean, the fear that regular folks just walking, just existing in the Capitol building, needing to use the facilities, are now going to feel because a majority of the majority party in both the Senate and the House has decided, no, human rights, we're going to put a boot on your neck in this regard.
Yes, and I want to make clear that there's a reason why they were targeting Sarah McBride. There's a reason why they focused these bathroom attacks on her. Sarah McBride, for who she is a very moderate, middle of the road Democrat. She's very non-confrontational, not a controversial figure in her own right.
She's pro-Israel, and that's something I would have major disagreements with her on.
Right. And so the reason why they are targeting her is because if Sarah McBride is dangerous in a bathroom, then any trans person is. You know, you can go back to her history. She was responsible for the Paid Family Leave Act in Delaware, which, you know, was helping mothers not go into poverty after a pregnancy. And she's, you know, if she is in a bathroom, somebody who has done things like that, and people are saying that she's dangerous, that she's going to assault fellow congresswomen. Like, we literally had Nancy Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene accuse her of potentially assaulting fellow congresswomen whenever they are protecting, you know, somebody who is credibly accused of sexual exploitation of minors. It boggles the mind.
It is incredible that in one breath, Nancy Mace can use the fact that she was a victim of rape to justify keeping trans women out of bathrooms, as if inherently trans women are there to rape her or rape other women in a way that, I mean, that's an old trope for LGBTQ people, and I want to explore that a bit more. But it's also just the fact that she is fully supportive of this administration's nominees, who are, it's almost as if it's a requirement that you have had to be credibly accused of sexual assault in the past. Many of these Trump appointees have been, and that feels like a message in and of itself as well.
It does. And I think that it just lays bare the hypocrisy here. You know, I don't think that Nancy Mace actually, you know, believes that Sarah McBride is going to assault her in the bathroom. I cannot imagine even considering that, even thinking that. I don't think that it's about sexual assault. It's not about protecting women. You know, you have the Republican Congress people that have been pushing this really heavily. They've been the chief proponents of crackdowns on women's rights. They've been the chief proponents of crackdowns on reproductive health care and on other freedoms that, you know, women want to enjoy. And just because of this, it shows that it's never been about sports. It's never been about bathrooms. It's never been about kids. Like, that's not the purpose of everything that they're doing. They want it to, you know, goad McBride into doing something so that they could kick her out. That was the goal. They don't want her to be there in that room with them. And in fact, last night, Nancy Mace did an interview with Newsmax where I think she finally made clear why she is taking these positions. It's not about sexual assault. It's not about, you know, being scared of Sarah McBride. She says in that interview, this man in a dress thinks he's my equal. He's not, you know, misgendering Sarah McBride. And I just want to like make that so clear. It's not about any of that other stuff. It's about the audacity that a transgender person could ever be considered their equal. You know, Sarah McBride was elected by the same number of people that Marjorie Taylor Greene was, the same number of people that Nancy Mace was. She's representing 1 million people from Delaware. She got there just like she did, just like everybody else did.
She did. And Mace using her white female victimhood in this instance, right? You see this when it comes to other targeting of minority groups or traditionally repressed groups, whether it be how many black men were lynched in this country because white women often falsely would accuse black men of sexual assault. We've seen it again in the context of justifying the genocide in Gaza, right? Of how barbaric, according to Israel, Palestinian men are to the pure women on the Israeli side. And then for this, you just see how paper thin it is, and she admits her exact reasoning when she goes on cable news. And what's astounding to me is that there are a lot of liberal commentators who are accepting of this narrative that, whoa, we need to maybe hold off on protecting trans people. You mentioned Zoe Zephyr, obviously somebody who's a hero in this space. But, you know, that was an entirely different reaction when Representative Zephyr of Montana was banned from the House floor for her identity. And that was not too long ago. And there was the Democrats have kind of cowered really since then. And there's no evidence to suggest that they should. Like, the Republicans got wiped out in the 2022 midterms by running on anti-trans ideology. That's not what won this election for Trump. Trump overperformed Republicans. Unfortunately, people kind of like Trump. He's a memeable character, and they voted for him a little bit more than Kamala Harris. But that is not it's not a reinforcement of the Republican agenda in any way.
No, and like I've seen that reaction as well. And I just want to be clear. I do not believe that transgender people cost Kamala Harris or Democrats at large the election. I think that running away from policy platforms did. I watched during the last election as campaigns floundered and tried to excuse away progressive votes that they had taken on any number of issues, trans people included. You know, I think that kind of politics, it doesn't appear genuine. And Trump exploited that. But he didn't exploit that just with trans people. Like, he exploited that with immigration as well. Andy Bashir, very shortly after the election, came out. And he said that if you try to abandon LGBTQ people in hopes that you're going to somehow win votes and that they're not going to pull this again on you, it's ill-advised. He is from a Republican plus 30 state. He is a Democrat that won in a Republican plus 30 state twice. He won even with the same ads that were being run against Kamala Harris. But you know what Bashir did? He came out strongly supporting all of his votes, and he ran on his values. There was a quote in New York Times. It was he literally stated, "I vetoed numerous anti-LGBTQ bills, and I still beat Trump's handpicked candidate last fall. That happened because even though some voters might disagree with my vetoes, they knew the very next day I'd be announcing new jobs, opening a new health clinic, or finishing a new road that would cut off 20 minutes of their commute. Earning trust and showing people that you care about them also requires that we talk to people like normal human beings and that we're not afraid to share our why." And then he explains his own why. I think that, you know, Bashir gets it. And I think that some Democrats get it too. You're not going to win by offering people Republican light. Like, they're going to take the Republican all day long if their choice is Republican light and the Republican. You're going to win by selling your values. And some Democrats do that very well. Some Democrats are very good at selling the values that progressives and that the Democratic Party should commit to. But others, it seems, especially in this last election, were afraid of their values. They ran away from the votes that they had taken. You know, I saw attacks on Colin Allred. I saw attacks on Sherrod Brown saying, "Oh, you voted for men and women's restrooms." And the actual vote that they took was the Equality Act, like literally a bill that espouses equality under the law for LGBTQ people. And we saw Allred and Sherrod Brown run away from those votes. Like, they just floundered on the debate stage whenever they could not coherently explain their values of equality to other people. And both of them lost, of course. I'll also say, though, that, you know, a lot of these pundits that are trying to blame trans people for the election, they are ignoring probably the state where Democrats capitulated the most on transgender people, and that was New Hampshire, where 16 to 22 Democrats, depending on which bill, because there were multiple anti-trans bills that passed in New Hampshire, voted for those bills. And Republicans gained their largest majority in the New Hampshire House in quite a long time. And so, you know, whenever we see those kinds of reactions, it shows that it's not about trans people. It's not about immigrants. It's about how good you are at selling your values to the American people.
And it reinforces, as you're saying, this idea that what do they stand for, right? The lesson apparently for some of these pundits and Democrats is let's stand for less. No, that was the problem, is that you didn't draw enough of a contrast with Donald Trump. I mean, I think just exceptionalizing him and saying how dangerous he was not enough. People needed to know what you stood for. And what was the theme? What were Democrats really running on this election? It was that the economy's doing pretty good, trust us, even if you're not feeling it. And also, we're going to maintain these institutions that largely you don't like already and that are crushing you. And we're both the party of genocide, but we're also the party of ceasefire, and we're also the party of trans rights, but don't get too crazy about it. Like, what was the message? And this is a case in point, right?
Yeah, so the message was Republicans are right, but we're only going to go halfway as far as them.
Right.
Like, we saw in John, I don't know if you watched John Oliver, but there was a John Oliver segment where he goes over several of the ads that were run, and he's like, these are all Democratic ads. And I mean, you see things like, you know, these immigrants are flooding over the border, and like, you know, they're people like shooting guns and immigrants, and like, it's just all kinds of very right-wing aesthetic type things, and also right-wing values. And I think that, if you're a voter and you see somebody say, oh yeah, this other guy is right, but we're just not going to go as far as them. I think that if you are struggling in society and those are the only two options that you get, I understand why people would make that decision.
It's plain politics. It's drawing a contrast with your opposition. It's not that difficult to do, I think, and be moral and stand up for the right things at the same time. And, I'm curious about if you could explain why Republicans are so obsessed with sexualizing the bathroom. I gotta be honest, I think the last thing most people want to do in a public restroom is have sex. Is it tapping into tropes, homophobic tropes from the past? Because sometimes that was a place where folks could meet, including some former Republican congressmen, but we don't need to talk about that right now. That part of it is very bizarre to me.
Yeah, so, it's rhetorical. I think that we've seen this kind of rhetoric used against many minorities in the past, that people are unsafe in bathrooms. We've seen it used against lesbians in the past in locker rooms. That was a really common trope in the 1980s. We've seen it used against gay teachers in the 1970s, whenever there was a mass banning of gay teachers in several states. We've seen it used against other minorities. We've seen it used against immigrants. We've seen it used against Black people. We've seen it used against lots of different groups of people. And so I think that, it's not a genuine position. The genuine position is they want to eradicate trans people from public life. And if you're going to do that, the best way to do that is making it hard to travel, is making it hard to go to the bathroom. I know trans people in places like Texas where they currently have a bounty in some cities, in Odessa, Texas. If you catch a trans person in the bathroom, you can sue them for $10,000. And it's going to be hard for you to leave your home and go somewhere. I know people that have to map out the Starbucks on their routes, just so that way they know where there are gender neutral restrooms that they can go to, because they're scared. It's dangerous in some places. This was actually, this has been used before to control cisgender women. They used to call it the urine aeration. It's that there were not as many public bathrooms for women as there were men, and that kept women in the home more often. And this was like a tactic that was used a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, and the mechanism for that Texas law is basically identical to the abortion bounty. If you aid and abet an abortion in that state, it's the same mechanism, which is just it shows how old this stuff goes and how far back it goes. What should we be expecting for the next 4 years on this issue? It's going to be there's going to be a lot of suffering. But I guess there will be cracks where we can push back and resist. I just am curious what you think the kind of the first order crackdowns are going to be from this anti-trans administration and across the country with other Republican leadership.
Yeah. I've been tracking this legislation for a long time. I have a very good idea of how it's going to progress from here. And I've had conversations with, Democratic congressmen. I kind of have an idea on what we're going to see first. What I can say is that the very first thing that we're going to see are executive orders from Trump. And those are going to come on day one. And I anticipate that they're going to do a lot. We're going to have a military ban on day one for trans people. That's absolutely coming down the wire. I know many trans people in the military that are already preparing. And I've heard that the EOs are already drafted up for that. We're also likely going to see federal investigations on medical organizations like the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics. Trump has already said that that's going to happen, and he's putting people in place that would do that. For instance, if Matt Gaetz somehow gets through like a recess nomination or something like that, Matt Gaetz has already, sided with Trump on these sorts of investigations over transgender care. And we might see, for instance, I know that there's talk about putting Dr. Latipo from Florida, in a major position of power in the government. I know that they're thinking about him taking the
Can you
assistant.
explain who he is, by the way, for our audience?
Yeah, so Dr. Latipo is one of the primary sources of importing some of the worst anti-trans stuff into the United States and also exporting it abroad. He is in Florida. He's under DeSantis. He is the Surgeon General of Florida. And he essentially had research. He conducted research over trans care that was actually not research that he conducted. It was, they had this PowerPoint from a court case that showed that the end goal was to ban all gender affirming care before the research was even done. And so then he established the research with that end goal in mind. He basically put all the findings in there that would allow him to ban transgender care. And I want to really put the point on this. Dr. Ladapo is responsible for an adult gender affirming care ban in Florida. It has meant that 80% of transgender adults could not obtain their care in Florida. He also is a major anti-vaxxer. He has issued a guideline to all doctors to not vaccinate people over the age of 65, for instance. It's horrifying what Dr. Ladapo is going to do in the United States government if he's given a position. And this guy has been sued by the ACLU numerous times. He's got numerous cases against him right now over how he handles medical care, especially transgender care. And so, yeah, these are people that we are seeing potentially put into the government. The other thing I think we're going to see really quickly are crackdowns on bathrooms, crackdowns on IDs. We know, for instance, that Nancy Mace has drafted a second resolution that says that trans people will be banned from bathrooms in all federally owned properties. And I want to make it clear what that means. That is national parks. That is any building, any federal building, federal courthouses. That is also the Dulles and Reagan Airport, which is one of the main airports that, people fly through. And so, there's a lot of things that we're likely to see really, really quickly. I also do think that we're going to get some level of a gender affirming care ban for not just trans youth, but for many trans adults as well.
I mean, and that doesn't even need to be done through Congress. Basically, if Trump wants to essentially threaten the states, he can probably do so with his executive authority via the Attorney General or other enforcement bodies. That seems like he could easily do that without needing Congress whatsoever.
Yeah, so you're not going to be necessarily safe if you're in a blue state. And I know that some blue states are pushing back. Like, for instance, we've seen Gavin Newsom call a special session of the California legislature to try to put in as many protections against federal overreach as possible. But what we are expected to see, I think that we are going to see, for instance, Trump threatened to pull funding from public schools in blue states that support transgender people. They're going to argue that Title IX requires that you discriminate against transgender people in bathrooms, whereas it's been interpreted to protect transgender people in bathrooms. We've seen Glenn Youngkin in Virginia do this as well.
Any tips in terms of trans folks that are watching this who are obviously quite scared right now, I would imagine, about making sure that they have their medication that's available to them, that other care is available to them? What would you recommend as the best you can?
Yeah, so I wrote an article on this where I go through a series of guidelines that I recommend to all transgender people. And then the top recommendation is that you get your passport or you update your passport. And the reason for that is not because I'm telling people that they're going to have to flee the country. It's been misinterpreted to be that way. The reason I'm actually saying this is because your federal passport is one of the only documents that lasts 10 years that you can easily change your gender marker on right now. And so if you can get a federal document that has your correct gender marker on it, that could be good for 10 years. You could be good for a couple of administrations. And that's going to get a lot of people, I think, out of some immediate trouble. I also recommend that people update their state documents immediately. Make sure that they are going to last through the administration. That way, if they get revoked, if we get a guideline from Trump saying that all states have to issue state IDs that don't match your gender identity, you can go ahead and push back on that. So I recommend those two things. I also recommend that, if you are on medication, if you are taking estrogen or testosterone, talk to your doctors about ways to make that last longer. I know that some doctors, for instance, have advised their patients that they can use their vials for a little longer. I also recommend that people that are thinking about moving, that are putting those plans in place to move, now would be the time to start considering acting on those. I'm not going to suggest that everybody move because A, not everybody can, and B, not everybody wants to. A lot of people want to stay home to fight in their home states. However, many people are making the decision that they're going to be a little bit safer in a place like, California or Colorado or any of the other states that protect transgender care. And if that is your calculus, I would start at least making those considerations for whenever we see day one from the Trump administration.
Erin Reed, Erin in the Morning is the newsletter Substack. Subscribe for all news on this front. Really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are back, and we are going to wrap up the free part of this program and head into the fun half, where we will take your calls and read your IMs. But yes, Matt Gaetz has withdrawn. We will talk about that in the fun half. We will talk about the growing reporting around Pete Hegseth's alleged extremely violent sexual assault of somebody, and what that portends for these appointments. So,
and his writings in the Princeton Tory that kind of prefigure maybe, I don't know, a openness to date raping people.
Yes. So, spoiler, I guess not spoiler, or a teaser for the lovely things we'll be discussing in the fun half. I think we have Brandon, right? Let's let him in. But first, we rely on your support to make this show possible, especially in this Trump era. Like, it's not out of the question that we could be like facing a little bit of a crunch or a crackdown. Like, I'm not convinced that won't happen.
I don't know about Trump. I do know that defenders of Israel are doing a lot of smearing and a lot of reporting to advertisers. So yeah, defend us against those freaks while we let them sort of exhaust themselves defending or obscuring a genocide and pointing the finger elsewhere. Those are the people that I'm concerned about more than Trump, is the Zionists out there.
And I also saw that some thread on how Substack, like, their promises to their investors are way more than the amount of revenue that they're taking in, and like that platform could be in a little bit of trouble, like in terms of these subscriber services for journalists. So we like to have our system be direct and run by us and set up for quite a while, so
and not need any financing, for instance.
Right, exactly. So go to jointhemajority.report.com. $5 a month really helps us out, makes us resilient to all of these technological changes, and you can IM the show. So we'll be reading your IMs in the fun half. On ESPN, Bradley and I will be giving our picks against the spread as our competition continues for this NFL season. YouTube.com/ESPN show. Matt, what is happening on Left Reckoning?
Ryan Grimm was on talking about the squad, of course, AOC, and sort of the distance between her and movements that we're kind of marking, most notably on the issue of Israel. Also, Corey Bush and Jamal Bowman's losses, and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan. So check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
And do we have... Oh, there we go. Hello, guys.
Hello.
I can't hear you, Matt, but not yet. We can't hear you, Bender.
Hello, there we go.
There you go.
That fixes it. Okay.
That's great.
Hello, my friends. What's happening on the discourse, Brandon?
Yeah, so we'll have a new podcast out sometime this weekend for our podcast listeners. And tomorrow on our Twitch/YouTube stream, I will be starting my blind playthrough of Disco Elysium. A lot of people have suggested that we play through it. I'm
playing it now, Brandon. It's great.
I'm only vaguely aware of it. I know it's supposed to be great. It's about cops, so I'm going to call this series The Last Good Cop, and we're just gonna have a good time. So definitely stop by, go join the, go follow us on Twitch, go follow us on the YouTube, and you'll get to see me stumble through. Yeah, you'll get to stumble through.
All right.
More than just my words, but a game.
Well, what's the link to your link to your YouTube channel, Brandon?
Well, the link to my YouTube is youtube.com/TH3DISCOURSE. That should be how it's spelled. Boom. If it isn't, you can look it up.
All right. There you go. There you go. Matt Binder, what's happening on your many shows?
Sure. So this week, a special Wednesday night episode of Leftist Mafia. So we did that last night, youtube.com/Matt Binder. You could check it out. youtube.com/Matt Binder. You can check it out there. It was the 100th episode, if you can believe it. We've been doing this for 100 weeks. Why? I don't know. It's been fun. It's been great. It's been worth it. And here's to 100 more.
Woo! All right. Well, We will head into the fun half then, where the number is 646-257-3920. See you there.
Okay, Emma, please.
Well, I feel that my voice is sorely lacking on the majority report.
Wait, look, Sam is unpopular.
I do deserve a vacation at Disney World. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Emma to the show.
It is Thursday.
I think you need to take over for Sam.
Yes, please.
No. I'm gonna pause you right there.
Wait, what?
You can't encourage Emma to live like this. And I'll tell you why. She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. What? Tour, sushi, and poker.
Tim's upset.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. She was offered a tour, sushi, and
that's what we call it in the biz.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Right.
Tour, sushi, and poker.
We're gonna get demonetized.
I just think that what you did to Tim Pool was mean.
Free speech.
That's not what we're about here. Look at how sad he's become now. We shouldn't even talk about it because I think you're responsible.
I probably am in a certain way, but let's get to the meltdown here.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Oh my God.
Tour,
wow.
Sushi.
I'm sorry, I'm losing my fucking mind.
She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Logic.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Boy. Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid.
Had this debate 7,000 times.
A little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour. I'm losing my fucking mind.
Some people just don't understand.
So I'm not trying to be a dick right now, but like,
I absolutely think the U.S. should be providing me with a wife and kids.
That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, all right.
It's not a fun job.
Tour.
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
Willy Wonka tour.
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
Offered a tour.
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
Offered a tour.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Rogan has done it again.
Offered a tour.
That's a real thing. That's
poker with the boys.
I think he might be blowing it out of proportion.
real thing.
That's poker with the boys. Offered a tour.
That's a real thing. That's
poker.
Let's go, Joey.
Tour. Sushi and poker with the boys.
Take it easy, buddy.
Tour. Sushi and poker.
Things have really gotten out of hand.
Sushi and poker with the boys.
Delusional.
Tour.
Deluded.
Sushi.
You don't have a clue as to what's going on. Live YouTube.
Sam has like the weight of the world on his shoulders. Sam doesn't want to do this show anymore. It was so much easier when the majority report was just you. You were happy.
Let's change the subject.
Right.
Rangers and Knicks are doing great.
Now shut up. You don't want people saying reckless things on your program.
That's
Now,
one of the most difficult parts about this show.
This is a pro-killing podcast.
I'm thinking maybe it's time we bury the hatchet.
Left is best.
Violet tour.
Don't be foolish and don't fucking tweet at me and don't binge. The way Emma has cucked all of these people, love it.
That's where my heart is. So I wrote my honors thesis about it.
Oh,
Sorry,
she wrote an honest thesis. I guess I should hand the main mic to you now.
You are to the right of me on foreign policy.
We already fund Israel, dude. Are you against that?
That's a tougher question I have an answer to.
Incredible theme song.
Hi, Bumbler.
Emma Vigeland, absolutely one of my favorite people. Actually, not just in the game, like period.
And back.
We are back, folks. It is the fun half of this program. I want to just get right into it so we don't let it go by the wayside because everyone's itching to hear us talk about it. It just broke. Matt Gaetz has withdrawn his name from consideration for Attorney General. Here is his statement from Florida man and also allegedly self-trafficking man, although I would say that for some Florida folks, there's a bit of an overlap with in that Venn diagram. But anyway, Matt Gaetz says, I had excellent meetings with senators yesterday. I appreciated their thoughtful feedback and the incredible support of so many. Oh my, there's zero chance that any of the senators, and even Republicans, hate him. While the momentum was strong, it's clear my confirmation was unfairly becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump-Vance transition, blah, blah, blah. So he is going to get a pardon, and that's really all he needs, probably, if this investigation has any teeth. And then this just broke from CNN, an exclusive report here, that apparently the Ethics Committee and we're going to hear about dribs and drabs from the ethics committee. There was a second alleged sexual encounter between Matt Gaetz and a 17-year-old at the party, sources say. I'm reading this for the first time, so just scroll down a bit here, Bradley. The woman who says she had
17-year-old.
Right.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Matt Gaetz caught reading a book to a group of school children as this information drops.
Right. This will be wholesome, I'm sure. The woman who says she had sex when she was a minor with then Representative Matt Gaetz told the House Ethics Committee she had 2 sexual encounters with him at one party in 2017. The woman, who was 17 years old at the time, testified that the second sexual encounter, which has not previously been reported, included another adult woman. She also testified to both sexual encounters in a civil deposition as a part of a related lawsuit, sources said. So this is interesting. What's the headline here? If we could just scroll up. Okay. Basically, it was the same 17-year-old, but 2 sexual encounters. But I'm assuming that this goes a little bit deeper than that. We can speculate, but he's been the subject of a sex trafficking investigation.
Yeah, there are multiple Venmo. I mean, there's a headline where it's like he paid through Venmo somebody who later paid 2 other women the same amount of money. It's
I think
very clear
it was
on
Nestor that he paid, actually. I think
Nestor,
it was
his son, his beloved.
Yeah.
Is that weird relationship he has with the adult boy that he adopted.
I had forgotten about Nestor for a while. I forgot. I legitimately forgot about him until this new revelation.
It seems like Matt Gaetz probably forgot about him too, in the sense of he was just there. He was just a kid to be the bag man for payments to underage girls. He was
here's $600 for being awesome on Sunday morning.
And it seemed as if, per Paula Reed of CNN, that 45 minutes after they asked for comment about this, that Gaetz tweeted his withdrawal.
Yeah,
wow.
But I guess my question, I don't know. So I can read between the lines. I guess the real thing I want to know is, did the senators he met with have to tell him that he should pull out for this reason? Or did Gaetz kind of understand that going through with the nomination process would only invite increased scrutiny onto these particular allegations and, make it more likely they were acted upon or, maybe punished? It's
right.
I guess it doesn't matter, but I think I was pretty sure he was going to have to drop out, at least because of stuff like this.
Yeah, and it's not like Donald Trump put any thought into these nominations. It appears like he might have just been sitting around at Mar-a-Lago with Elon and going through the Rolodex of people that are despicable enough to support him wholeheartedly, but also the theme of these nominees for high-level positions like Attorney General and Secretary of Defense is that they've been accused of rape or sexual assault, including Pete Hegseth, which we'll get to in a second, which begs the question, why is Donald Trump nominating all these people who have allegations of sexual misconduct? Is it just because he has something over them so he can leverage complete loyalty? Or is it also a direct message to the extremely misogynistic campaign that he ran to these manosphere types as well, which is just like, yeah, we own you.
I honestly think it's just everybody he knows. Like when all you know is people who do sex crimes, then you're gonna nominate people who do sex crimes. I mean,
it can be both. It can be both.
There's an
event. If you go to a Moms
culture.
for Liberty event, if you go to a Moms for Liberty event and you talk to the concerned uncles there, you're going to find a lot of sex criminals as well. Although I have an additional question to yours, Emma, which is that if he has nominated all of these other sex criminals and it's likely that they're going to go through with those nominations, how bad and how much proof against Matt Gaetz actually is there,
right?
And how likely is it going to come out? Because it's already trickling out now. And so he has to be extraordinarily compromised for him to actually have to drop out, because it seems like there is just a base level of sexual criminality that is going on in the White House now. So it really does make me wonder, is this going to be a whole thing?
I am curious.
I would like to point out Liam Neeson, the Liam Neeson.
Not the famous
Neeson's going to hunt him down because it was his teenager.
I mean, he does go after these sex traffickers.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the particular set of skills the Liam Neeson has here is to post what looks like Exhibit 6 from this ethics report, which includes some things blacked out, but includes amounts, about 500, 515, 720. Platforms, PayPals, a lot of PayPals, and then we switched to Venmo, and then some notes from the PayPals. I'll just read some of those notes. Being my friend, being awesome, here, reimbursement. I don't know what that little smiley is there, but a little gift, just because. $400 for blocked out flight plus extra for you, and then 100 for travel and 150 for travel.
I do like the House Ethics Committee's textual reimagining of emojis that he's sending over Venmo. It's pretty funny.
Guys, I gotta say, none of you have ever sent me $250 for being your friend, so I'm starting to question our friendship. All right, where's my money?
I guess we're not as sincere as Matt Gaetz in how much he loved this young girl and cared for her and wanted her to have everything that he could provide.
I'm a mentor,
including trauma.
There's so much I would love to know about being a 21-year-old girl.
Including what are those Venmo details?
Yeah, you and I want to know, like, why was it the second one that because I like the details of the additional adult woman. I wonder if that's what's made him drop out. I wonder if that woman is going to come out and say something, or he's concerned about that, or is that woman someone he knows and is still very close with and wants to, so he's doing this to drop everything to protect her? Because that's the only difference between the first one and the second one. And he had no problem running for AG when the first one was out there.
Interesting.
Well, I think it's a great question, Matt. I think that it really depends on whether or not the information ever gets released to the public in a way that's substantial and like how damaging it is, because it could be possible that he thought he'd be able to outrun the allegations being made public. That if he was AG and, he was nominated and pushed through, he'd have an easier time not being like censured or arrested or whatever the punishment is going to be for it than he would if he were like just a congressperson. And so he might have just been trying to like actually outrun it and like shield himself in the cloak of the office. But I think the problem with that is that Republicans don't like him either. Like a lot of Republicans, a lot of like evangelicals seemingly were very disturbed by his nomination. And so it was probably likely that it was going to come out. And so I don't know if even the second person has a real impact on it, or just like the knowledge that like, no, this is going to come out. Like this is, or rather the second incident, like that this is just going to come out. So, we can't have you bringing down the entire Trump administration with your extreme sex criminality, just like, maybe a normal sex criminal.
And you mentioned the evangelical stuff. Like it doesn't stick to guys who aren't Trump, because Trump has taken on an almost like religious cult-like posture with evangelicals where he's imperfect, but delivering for the Lord. But the people that exhibit his qualities beneath him, they just don't have that juice, right? Because it's a semi-cult-like kind of situation with Trump and the base, and so it's easier to throw Gaetz overboard.
I also think there might just be a bit of a civil war going on within the Republican Party to get next to Trump, because everyone knows that once you're next to Trump, you have his ear. Like once you're like the last person to flatter Trump, you have a good chance of getting, what your will is done. And so I think evangelicals are competing with like MAGA chuds to get as close to Trump as possible. It's just true, right? Because like, there are just a lot of factions within the Republican Party who have slightly different flavors of evil that they want to inflict onto the world. And, Gaetz was just like a MAGA, real far right Trumper guy, and evangelicals probably want, especially at the Attorney General, as we move into a world where like a lot of things that were previously legal will likely be criminalized, like abortion, like maybe gay marriage, that it'll be better if there's an evangelical Attorney General in place, and someone who is going to be much more zealous in his pursuit of these things.
Trump may just promote the guy who's the person he was assigning as Deputy Attorney General, who is his personal attorney, who got he got him out of, he feels like, a lot of his legal quandaries. So
Elena Baba?
No, not her. It's a man, and I'm totally blanking on his name. Bradley.
Todd Blanche.
Blanche.
I think
That's my prediction for the next pick.
We should just get past O's. Let's just make it Ghislaine Maxwell. Let's just get
right. Pardon Ghislaine, and then make her hybrid attorney general, and I don't know, like you can throw another cabinet position in there. What's a womanly one? He loves giving Department of Education to a woman, including
Small Business Administration. Linda McMahon's former perch.
Department of Transportation. Ghislaine Maxwell could lead that. She knows a lot about different flights.
Well, Sean Duffy's already there, the former Fox host and Real World star. So.
Yeah. Do we have Matt Gaetz back in the day?
So this is a very weird. I don't know if people remember the context for Matt Gaetz and his son Nestor appearing on Tucker Carlson's program, but Matt Gaetz got into a big argument with a Louisiana lawmaker who's. Maybe we play the start of this, Bradley. It started at the very beginning. And I don't know how much of this we actually want to go to, but yeah, just go to the very beginning. Because this was Nestor, who is the intermediary for Venmo payments to young women, father and son relationships. They're different in 2024.
The Cultural Revolution now in progress is making a dangerous term. It's actually been here for quite some time. You're watching elected leaders say you are not allowed to participate in our system if you're the wrong color. During a recent argument on the House floor, Democratic Congressman Cedric Richmond of Louisiana argued that some people just shouldn't be in the debate because they're the wrong skin color or their children are. Richmond's claims started off with a fight with Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz.
Oh my God.
You all are white males. You never lived in my shoes, and you do not know what it's like to be an African American male.
Are you suggesting that you're certain that none of us have non-white children? Because you reflected on your black son and you said none of us could understand.
Man, stop. I'm not about to get sidetracked about the color of our children. We're talking about black kids. I reclaim my time. It is not about the color of your kids. It is about black males, black people in the streets that are getting killed. And if one of them happens to be your kid, I'm concerned about him too. And clearly I'm more concerned about him than you are. So let's be clear about that.
You're claiming you're more concerned for my family than I do? Who in the hell do you...
Gentlemen,
oh my God.
Yeah.
All right. All right, like when he realized, I can make this into a thing. I thought Cedric Richmond was going to go harder and basically be like, that's not your son, you dummy.
But just understand what happened here is he was making a point about black people, and Gaetz says, you don't think I can understand? Well, I have a, not black son, but Cuban adopted kid
son.
that I adopted
Brown
6
son.
years ago.
And he apparently came out with his revelation to the press that he had his son like 2 days before his alleged co-conspirator was indicted. So a suspicious timing to
Greenberg?
Yes, Greenberg, to get performative about your son on the House floor. But here's the rest of that segment where Matt Gaetz sprinted to Fox News to make this argument.
In our family, we treat everyone equally. It doesn't matter what their background is, what their race is. We treat every American with respect.
Does he learn that at school as well, do you think? I mean, do you think the culture in which he's growing up reinforces that obvious and most American of all messages?
Well, why don't you ask him, Tucker? He's I think, piped in from the studio in Florida.
Oh, my God.
Thanks for joining us. What do you make of Cedric Richmond's attack today? Did you see all this?
I did not see it because I was sleeping from a workout from the night before. But yes, once I woke up, I woke up to seeing all these tweets, and I was like, "What's going on?" And Mike gave me a call telling me about it,
like an
and then I saw
skit.
it, and I think it's kind of unfair to, to tell someone that they don't understand because they don't have. Because
Look
of their
at
racial
Gaetz.
color.
He's just like clenching his jaw. Get through this.
He's fighting for equality, but if you tell someone to not get involved that he doesn't understand because of his color, you're kind of being a hypocrite there.
Yes, I think that's very nicely put.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Beautiful segment.
He raised you well.
Oh, great.
Oh, my God.
How old is Nestor supposed to be? Like, I'm just not clear on that. I think the details in my head are fuzzy. Like he adopted him at 15 and and now he's like 21 or something. It's very bizarre.
There's no corroborating information for any of this, though, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I mean, allegedly he had adopted him for like 6 years at that point, but I mean, who knows?
Disappeared one day.
I'm sorry. There's no chance. There's
some
way.
very strange things going on in the Gaetz household. And yeah, what did Galban? He came up again. That he was forwarded money to 2 young women on behalf of Matt Gaetz. So interesting. Nestor Galban's now 23, serving as an Air Force first class airman in Germany. So
I'm glad he got out.
Yeah, same. Right, I felt badly almost for him having to get trotted out there, and he didn't really address the son stuff. He just was like vaguely saying he disagreed with that Cedric Richmond guy. So
I don't think Republican lawmakers should be able to adopt, particularly if they're single. But whatever. I think it's weird. And I mean, this is not to cast aspersions on actual people who raise kids that aren't politicians. But there's something weird going on with people who are in Republican politics adopting kids from different parts of the world, and I think and then you have him as years later forwarding money to people you're fucking as a congressperson. There's some weird stuff going on here, and it'd be nice. Maybe Tucker wants to circle back and be an intrepid journalist and see, like, hey, did I just pass some really creepy stuff off my airlines?
Yeah, for all the talk about groomers, it's just always projectioning. When you say there's weird stuff going on in the Gaetz household, I return to what Binder said earlier. Who was that adult woman in that encounter is my other question. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll find out. Yeah.
It's nice.
Hopefully we find out, honestly.
It's just nice for Matt Gaetz to teach Nestor Galban such good American values, like how to give payments for sex to people, and hopefully quiet, but I mean, I guess not too quiet.
Greg from Arkansas says Gaetzgate is proof that public pressure works. I wouldn't go that far, to be honest. I mean, I don't know if it's public pressure. It was more internal pressure from Republicans being like, I'm not doing this, and we won't go public, but we're going to sink this if this goes
more
through.
Like there's a limited to sort of like authoritarian hubris.
Yeah.
But,
And also that Trump wasn't that committed to this. He just was, I think, flying off the cuff, chilling with Elon, just pulling names out of his ass. Like, there's no real infrastructure in place to do vetting. Normally these cabinet appointments, there's whole teams that make these determinations, and it doesn't seem like that was the case in this situation.
Well, I don't think they care to do that this time around. It's probably easier just to skip the whole process.
From all I've heard, that he's just sitting in Mar-a-Lago watching like reels, like he's watching their newsreels, seeing how vigorously they defend him, and if he likes their, the cut of their jib, I guess, or if they
or their jaw.
Yeah, if they're like blonde men or women, then they have a place in the Trump White House. So I think it's, he's always been a fly by the seat of his pants guy.
Absolutely.
Just to put the Washington Post line on it, they're paid through Venmo and other conduits, including the PayPal of Nestor Galban, whom Gaetz referred to as, quote, his adopted son. I like the shade of who he referred to as, because isn't there like documents you could show?
There should be. There should be.
Yeah.
Hopefully someone looks into this now. Romancer says some of my best children are POC. Matt Gaetz. I void my bowels daily says it looks like the position for Attorney General just opened up for Trump's Plan B, Vince McMahon. I was saying earlier that I think it's going to be his personal attorney. But Vergonia says Gary Gensler just announced he's stepping down as SEC chair on January 20th, rolling over and showing our bellies. Yeah, I mean, Gensler, I don't know. I mean, they're all, that matters a little less to me than the press, which is supposed to be challenging power, rolling over and showing their bellies. But I hear what you're saying. Midwestern Transbian says, you guys, so glad you guys had Erin on. Her voice is so important. I remember watching Sarah McBride's race with hope and joy in my heart, but feeling nothing but dread seeing her win because I knew what was coming. Just shows how important this fight is. Left is best. Yep. Lattice of Spin says, Emma, you made me and sports shouting proud. That's a great 30 Rock reference. Highly enjoyed how bothered you made Piers. Maybe we'll play that a little later.
That was good. I've thoroughly enjoyed that.
We'll play that a little later maybe and be a little self-aggrandizing. But I do think I don't know if I'll get invited back. We'll see. I did talk over everybody. I'll cop to it. Jazz Apple. What'd you say?
Were they British? Because if they're British, then that's just like punishment for colonization.
Piers is, and he was really my primary focus. I think, we'll play it in a little bit.
Oh, I just realized he should make Judge Judy Attorney General.
Yes, you're right. But doesn't she make I've looked up how she makes?
That's a pay cut.
That's
residuals.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah.
Yeah, she'll make that when
she makes
she
a
did
lot.
it, though.
Yeah. Between the 101 and the 5, I think Tulsi thinks she's Rogue from X-Men or something, like a chameleon. Maybe she literally believes she can absorb people's powers or something. Well, she believes a ton of weird stuff in that cult. Zappa Towel sleeping from working the night before. How late is bro sleeping? I know when he said working, it's like, what does that mean? Partying with Matt? Gaetz?
Weird stuff going on down in Florida is what that means.
Yeah. Let's do this Pete Hegseth thing now. So now that Matt Gaetz has withdrawn his name from consideration for Attorney General because, in part, he's completely unqualified. He can't even, I think, there were many years leading up to this where he couldn't practice in Florida because he just hasn't paid his dues. He hasn't been a practicing lawyer basically his entire adult life. And but it was really the sexual misconduct allegation and the reports that were coming out about him allegedly sleeping with an underage girl. Now, as is the theme with these cabinet picks, Trump 2.0, the rape crew, alleged rape crew, putting that in front of everything these days. The Pete Hegseth is next up for Secretary of Defense. This is a guy who is a former Fox and Friends weekend host. Yes, he's an Army National Guard veteran, but he hasn't served in government really since then. After his service, he wrote books like The American Crusade. That was the name of it, where he talked about how there were issues with Muslim birth rates in Michigan. He has argued against women serving in combat roles in the military. He has tattoos all over his body that have links to white nationalists and white supremacist groups, crusaders, that kind of thing. So much so that one of the people that served with him flagged him to the FBI. So there's a lot there with this freak Hegseth, but the sexual assault allegation, again, is in theme with the rest of the people that Trump is nominating. So here is Hegseth being asked about this just around an hour ago by CNN.
We take absolutely nothing for granted, and we welcome the opportunity to talk to any senator that wants to talk to us.
Did you sexually assault a woman in Monterey, California?
I have, as far as the media is concerned, I'll keep this very simple. The matter was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared, and that's where I'm going to leave it. Thank you very much.
So, was that the case? Was that matter fully investigated? Let's pull up the New York Times' recounting of this particular report. There was a police report that was filed in this allegation, and these are the details of this allegation. Obviously, warning, there are some graphic pieces in this. So this is, again, his choice for defense secretary. Scroll down a bit here. So a police report released Wednesday night provided graphic details about a sexual assault accusation against Pete Hegseth, President-elect Donald J. Trump's pick for defense secretary. The report also documents Mr. Hegseth's vehement denials that he coerced the complainant into a sexual encounter in Monterey, California, at a political conference 7 years ago. Mr. Hegseth was never charged with a crime. According to the report, the woman, whose name was withheld, told the police that she ended up in Mr. Hegseth's hotel room after he spoke at the conference in October 2017, hosted by the California Federation of Republican Women at the Hyatt Regency Monterey Hotel and Spa. The woman, referred to throughout the report as Jane Doe, said Mr. Hegseth took her phone, blocked his hotel room door when she tried to leave, and sexually assaulted her, ejaculating on her stomach. She said that her memory was hazy and that she had drunk far more alcohol than usual throughout the day. But there's another piece of that as well. Mr. Hegseth told police that he repeatedly sought the woman's consent for sex, making sure she was comfortable with what was going on, including the fact that he was not using a condom. Video footage at the hotel earlier that evening showed them at one point leaving a hotel bar with their arms locked together. The report said Mr. Hegseth said that he believed the woman led him to his room and that he had no plans to have sex with her, the report said. He might have thought that was someone else, but not Jane Doe. Okay, but this is the part, if we could scroll down to this piece, which is Sam's talked about, but keep going. It's not gotten a ton of attention. Go up. Oh, wait, here it is. The woman claimed she was introduced to Mr. Hegseth at the end of the conference. She told the police she had observed him acting inappropriately, including rubbing women's legs. In a text message, she told someone whose name was redacted that Mr. Hegseth was giving off a creeper vibe, the report said. She said she went with a group of women to the Knuckles sports bar attached to the hotel, and that's when things got fuzzy. Mr. Hegseth was also at that bar. And she said that she had told him she did not like how he had treated women at the conference. The woman told police that she did not remember how many alcoholic drinks she had there, but recalled the bartender handing her a drink. She later told the hospital nurse she believed that something may have been slipped in her drink because her memory of the night's events was so hazy. So, and then there's other discussions about how other women say that Mr. Hegseth was hitting on them a lot, even when they were not interested. So that's that.
Creeper is an interesting term because that's like language from pre Me Too to sort of describe this stuff.
2017, it would match up quite well.
Right, like when I was in college, that's what people were describing men as that had, handsy issues or worse, like date rape sort of stuff, like massive creeper sort of thing. It's interesting.
And do you have that Judd Legum thing that we can pull up?
Yeah.
This is also, Matt was talking about this earlier. I hadn't seen this until today. That apparently, when he was a student at Princeton, Hegseth wrote in a right-wing paper.
The Princeton Tory.
Jesus.
I wonder if that still exists. If anyone at Princeton wants to help us flame a modern, if that still exists, like we should go at these kids. But anyway, Princeton Tory wrote in a newspaper in September 2002 edition of the publication flagged for popular information. Oh, sorry. Flagged for popular information by Will Davis of ARC Initiatives. Hegseth published a column that claimed having intercourse with an unconscious woman was not rape. The columnist claimed that rape required both failure to consent and duress, and women who are passed out cannot experience duress. A bemusing yet this is Hegseth speaking. A bemusing yet mandatory program revolved entirely around whether an instance of sexual intercourse constituted rape. The actual instance portrayed in the skit was not, in fact, a clear case of rape, at least not in my home state. In short, though intercourse was not consented to, there was no duress because the girl drank herself into unconsciousness. Both criteria must be satisfied for rape. Unfortunately, the panelists never cited legal definition of rape. So he put that in the Princeton Tory. And that combined with the story you just told us, Emma, where she seemed a bit confused, I am worried that Pete Hegseth is a date rapist.
And and the way that I'll just want one quick point. The way that Judd Legum or the whoever wrote this popular info piece, they do great work. The next bullet point there about how it could be a target for blackmail, being him it goes both ways, right? Where Trump can use this, and this is part of, I think, why he's appointing the rape cabinet as leverage over these folks. But also, it's also to send a message, but it's also for foreign governments. I mean, that is a big part, I think, of the underreported stuff about Jeffrey Epstein. his role in providing blackmail for either the United States government potentially or the Israeli government, given his connections through Maxwell. Sorry, Brandon.
No, I mean, I also think those things are very true. Like, it does make him a very likely